Two con artists prey on women for their money. One takes a high-class approach, while the other is more of a small-time scammer. Upon meeting, they clash in a Mediterranean hotspot. The con men make a bet on who can swindle a young American heiress first. All this can only mean one thing. All bets are off, and we're comparing Bedtime Story and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels on this episode of Retro vs. Remake. Parker.
I'm Dan Bulick. Welcome to another episode of Retro vs. Remake. This is the series where we compare movies and their remakes. Join us as we answer the question, should this remake exist? Today's films are Bedtime Stories and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Absolutely. Now, Bedtime Story is a 1964 film starring David Niven, who's back.
Hey!
We'll see if it's a better movie. Marlon Brando, Shirley Jones, Dodie Goodman, Aram Stephen, Parley Bear, Mary Windsor, and Rebecca Sand. I don't know why I named those people. Most of them aren't.
They're not really big-time players in this.
This movie is directed by Ralph Levy, screenplay by Stanley Shapiro and Paul Hennick, music by Hans J. Salter. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, a 1988 film starring Steve Martin, Michael Caine, Glenn Headley, Anton Rogers, Barbara Harris, Ian McDermott, Dana Ivey, Megan Faye, and Francis Conroy. Again, I named too many people. Directed by Frank Oz. The screenplay is by Dale Launer, with, of course, the original writers Stanley Shapiro and Paul Hennick, and music by Miles Goodman. So, these are two very similar films. For backstory, both these films kind of went through recasts slightly. The original 64 film was, of course, called Bedtime Story. It was meant for Doris Day, Cary Grant, and Rock Hudson. And eventually it was Shirley Jones, David Niven, and Brando. And in the remake, there were a couple decisions. At one point, it was supposed to be like David Bowie and like Mick Jagger.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they were like...
I mean, they were pretty popular in the 80s.
They were. They were. That didn't happen for reasons that probably make a lot of sense.
I can see maybe Bowie doing it.
I can see Bowie.
Jagger? I don't know about that. That's a weird casting choice.
Well, you definitely have Bowie in like the Nivens kind of character.
Definitely the higher class thief.
Yeah. At one point, Eddie Murphy was considered for Freddie Benson, which I think
I could see that working.
Could have been interesting.
I might actually been
well. And John Cleese was on that version, but we got what we got.
Okay.
So just some background that like. There are a lot of actors considered to play these roles, and it's a story that, in both films, I think is fairly straightforward to tell. So, just interesting backstory. What's your experience with the films?
I did not know Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was a remake until you brought it up. So I was not familiar with Bedtime Stories at all, and I had not really even seen Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I just kind of occasionally ran into it when I'm flipping through channels, and I was like, oh, Steve Martin, Michael Caine. Interesting. Next. And so I'd never seen them, but I did see the remake, The Hustle, with Anne Hathaway and Rumor Wilson.
Was that 2019? Something like that?
Yeah, it was very recent, and I've seen that, and, well, that's a film. So I guess I am very familiar with the source material. So I've seen this story told 3 different times.
Yeah. Similar background, right? Like, I have seen like the cover art for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels as I browsed through. Never actually saw the film. I didn't really know Bedtime Story existed until I was doing research for remakes. But I have seen parts of The Hustle before this. I was like, Rebel Wilson, Anne Hathaway, this should be fun. I got through about half of it the first time, and I actually revisited that film, so I have seen all 3 films now.
Yes. Interesting. I was looking at the cast of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, so we got some Star Wars ties here. We got directed by Frank Oz, who, of course, Yoda, but also Ian McDermott. You know who that is?
Ian McDermott, no.
That's Emperor Palpatine.
Whoa!
Yeah, so we got Yoda and the Emperor
That's crazy.
in this remake.
Working together.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I didn't know Ian McDermott was in anything other than Star Wars.
I know.
So this is a rare sighting of him outside that universe.
And Frank Oz, wow.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we've done Frank Oz before, Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
And we probably will see him again. He's done a few remakes. Stepford Wives in particular pops out.
Oh, cool. So eventually we will come back to the Frank Oz universe.
Yeah. Yes.
That's awesome. This synopsis was pretty easy.
Yeah, they didn't change anything. All the names are the same.
Yep.
Maybe the locations are slightly different.
No.
No. I mean, that comes from having, again, just looking at the cast, the screenwriters, the screenplay. You get two of the screenwriters from the original film in this remake.
They're like, we're going to take this script and then change it just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Both films, for background, the original film is shot like primarily in Cannes, whatever you call it, little French town. The remake, some of it is shot there, so there's not much change here. With that being said, synopsis. Lawrence Jameson, the last name spelled slightly different, is a refined, elegant con artist living in the French Riviera town of Beaumont-sur-Mer, where he masquerades as a deposed prince of a small European country, seducing wealthy women into donating money and jewelry to his revolutionary cause. He gets help with this ruse from others, including an amoral police officer named Andre. While on a train one day, Lawrence crosses paths with a small-time American hustler, Freddie Benson, who brags about his meager accomplishments. Worried that Freddie's inexperienced antics will scare away his prey, Lawrence attempts to trick Freddie into choosing a different destination, then has him arrested and put on a plane out of town. However, Freddie meets one of Lawrence's former marks. He blackmails Lawrence into taking him on as a student.
You're not going to say Fanny of Omaha?
Fanny of Omaha. Oh, man. Great character. Freddie is taught to play Lawrence's mentally challenged brother, Ruprecht, a tactic to scare women away from trying to marry him. They're successful, but when Lawrence refuses to pay Freddie until he can acquire the culture and refinement necessary for Lawrence's style of con, Freddie angrily quits but refuses to leave town. Lawrence believes there's not enough room for both of them in Beaumont-sur-Mer, so the two make a bet. The first to con a selected mark wins, and the other must leave town. They choose Janet, a naive American heiress, as their target. Freddie poses as a soldier who is suffering from psychosomatic paralysis. He wins Janet's affections with a sad story, convinces her that he needs money to pay for treatment by a famous psychiatrist, Dr. Schaffhausen. Lawrence then masquerades as Dr. Schaffhausen, agreeing to treat Freddie's condition with the stipulation that Janet only pays Lawrence directly. The two battle for Janet's affections, ruthlessly sabotaging each other, with Lawrence mostly coming out on top. Lawrence discovers that Janet is not wealthy, but merely a contest winner, and that she intends to sell off the remainder of her winnings to pay for Freddie's treatment. Since Lawrence only preys on wealthy women, he attempts to call off the bet. Freddie refuses but suggests that they change the bet. The first to get her in bed will win. Lawrence refuses to try to seduce Janet, but bets that Freddie will fail to do so. Freddie schemes to get Lawrence kidnapped so he can win a new bet. However, Lawrence gets the upper hand and is there the entire time Freddie tries to seduce Janet. Lawrence's victory is only temporary as Janet eventually returns to her hotel room to find Freddie there. She declares her love for Freddie, and they spend the night together. Andre reports this to Lawrence, who accepts his defeat with grace. However, not as all as it seems, and each movie ends their respective way. Yeah.
Well, I think because the movies are so similar, you're able to go into such detail with what happened.
It's usually like we're dancing around it so much that like I don't get into too much detail. And upon reading this, I'm like, well, that's the entire movie.
Yeah, you just read the book of the movie.
Yeah. So if you don't want to watch it, that's what happens.
There you
go. Though these are very similar films.
Very similar.
I mean, yeah, like almost beat for beat in a lot of instances. There are some major changes, and a lot of that happens with the actual lead characters themselves. But not really with the lead character I'm going to start with. In the original film, Bedtime Story, David Niven plays Lawrence Jameson.
All right, you're on. You seem very interested in that young lady who just checked in. Should we make her the test case?
And in our 1988 remake, Michael Caine plays Lawrence Jameson.
No, I haven't. I'm afraid it's a little out of my class.
So we got two returning
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, you keep picking these Michael Caine movies.
I'm a Michael Caine fan, apparently.
And you're the one that picked the David Niven movie, too, so.
I'm also a David Niven fan. And now I got a Niven Caine crossover. Lawrence Jameson is seemingly a man of elegance, taste, culture. In both films, we kind of get the same opening of Jameson basically taking jewelry from a widowed,
Widow.
yeah, a rich widow. And, there's this fun backstory where he's like, I can't take your diamonds. And she's like, please take them for your people. And he's like, well, maybe for the kids.
For the kids.
But, like, I mean, there's not really a lot in these early scenes that are very different in their portrayal. They're, tall, mustached, well-dressed gentlemen that have this kind of dark edge where they have been in Beaumont-sur-Mer, just basically targeting rich widows with this sort of Chateau Prince background. Did you get any real read in any direction for these guys?
I mean, they're very similar portrayals. We saw David Niven in Casino Royale, and he was okay in that movie.
Yeah.
He was one of the spots that wasn't terrible, but it was much better here, better in Bedtime Story. You pretty much nailed the description. This kind of high class sort of con artist, and their portrayals are. They're just the same portrayal.
It's the same character. I mean, it's the same mustache.
Yeah.
It's the same hair.
A slick back with Michael Caine. But it's a good portrayal for both films, but they're just so similar. I can't really figure anything.
I think they're
focus on.
They're both so natural. I would say Niven has the advantage of being the first one to do it, so I felt he was very natural and believable in this role as like this classy Englishman sort of character. Michael Caine, I thought, because I'm not used to seeing him with that look, that threw me off a little bit, but also very believable.
Yeah, of course,
because he's a classy English guy.
Michael Caine, right?
But ultimately, I think this character opens up as we talk about the interplay with our next character.
Well, there's only one little difference, because they both pretend to be this Schaffhausen. So David Niven just stays the same the whole time, but Michael Caine actually takes on a German accent.
Yeah.
So I will say there's one difference there.
That's fair. That's fair. Like Schaffhausen, which I believe, I want to say he's German in one of the films, he's Dutch in the other for some reason.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's why.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
and we'll talk about a bit. Like, I mean, both of these characters are walking this line of serious, regal, while also being a con man. But also slightly comedic in that take. Like you mentioned with Schaffhausen, the Schaffhausen character, I think Michael Caine gets to play and explore more in this role, like you mentioned with the voice and stuff like that. But I think that's because of the general tone shift in this remake. The remake is, we'll talk about, is slightly more comedic. And, I mean, I think that comes right into play in our casting of the other lead, as it were. When we talk about the counterpart, Niven's approach to kind of talking about his sort of cultural philosophy and refinement is played out slightly different. It's more like amongst the townspeople versus Michael Caine is more of like doing that like teacher type in-house training. So again, minor difference, but if I had to
the bells,
the Beaumont-sur-Mer.
We're there.
On the French Riviera. You're just not going to see a lot of changes here. Like, they decided to kind of stick with the characters. Where we do see that tonal shift that we're talking about is with our our second lead. In the original film, it's Marlon Brando who plays Freddie Benson.
Remember this, it takes 6 men to carry a guy to his grave. It takes 1 woman to put him there.
And in the 1988 remake, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Steve Martin plays Freddie Benson.
If I lose, I'll leave. If I win, you leave.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things that is going to be apparent to anyone that watches these two films is Brando has much more of a backstory, and I guess in that sense an arc because of it. Brando starts as a military man in Germany who he's got one scam.
Yeah, go to that grandma. Grandma's his go-to.
He gets a photo of the house you're currently living in. Says that his grandma used to live there, and then he like basically works his way into these women's houses, and
ultimately to their bedroom and to their pocketbooks.
But one key difference there, besides just this military sort of background that we get to play in, and we get to see some of Brando's exploits before he meets Lawrence. Another key difference here is like Marlon Brando is clearly younger than David Niven. Like, he's younger, he plays like this more kind of attractive, in a conventional sense, version, which is, I think, he uses his looks more in this absurd backstory to bed women and, you know, steal their money, versus like when you're looking at Steve Martin, the difference between Steve Martin and Michael Caine in terms of like age and appearance is like just not apparent to me.
Yeah,
at all.
It's funny because Steve Martin does have this one line. He's like, "I'm younger, I'm better looking than you." It's like, what?
I know.
I'm so confused.
I was like, I don't know if he is.
You should have had the Steve Martin with the wig from Little Shop of Horrors. That would have been much better.
Oh man, he's so good in that. Yeah. But yeah, like that backstory is just kind of missing. You know, there's. Michael Caine's character is concerned with like this jackal kind of con artist that exists in the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels universe, and like, you know, you could be led to believe that maybe that's Steve Martin to a certain extent, but you really don't know anything about him until you first see him on the train. Whereas like Brando, though he's not as innately funny as Steve Martin, he does get some fun scenes that are just completely not there for Steve Martin, like when he meets the Burgermeister's daughter.
Yeah.
You know, he starts taking his clothes off. Well, the Burgermeister's daughter is off limits to any American soldier in town, and you know, he's still working his game. So he's like, he takes his clothes off, and when the Burgermeister comes in, he's like, "Oh, I'm working on calisthenics. You know, got to get a exercise program." So like you get to see him in action with women before meeting Lawrence. He gets that funny beat with the Burgermeister's daughter. He gets another funny beat when he's caught dead to rights and he basically blackmails his superior officer.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
Fucking awesome scene.
Yeah, that scene's so great because it kind of reminded me of the Nutty Professor. Yeah. When he all of a sudden like had the professor just acting like an ass. Like Brando, he's got Brando dead to rights. Yeah. He's like, you are in so much trouble. He's like, am I in trouble or are you in trouble? Right. He starts flipping the script on him. Like, and then at the end of the scene, he's sitting in his general's chair, pouring a drink, got his feet up on the desk. Oh, the turnaround of that scene is just, I love scenes like that. And he does it so well. And
the reveal that he's run the same scam on that officer's daughter.
Yeah, that was so funny. Did you know that his grandma used to live in our house? Oh my god, that was so funny.
So good. Like I said, Brando's not inherently like as funny as Steve Martin, right? But like he plays these scenes so well. You know, when he makes that switch and he's sitting in the chair, pulls out like knows where the scotch is, and like. He's blackmailing the guy. He's like, you know, you've got gambling in your divisions. You've got people sneaking out women and stuff, drinking. And he's like, wow, I got all this happening in my business. Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, I'm the one who's doing it. so you're going to give me a nice little discharge right now and, you know, some money. Why am I going to send you money? Well. I mean, it's so good, that scene, and I think that's a big difference between his portrayal and Steve Martin's, because we get this backstory with him.
Right.
So I think that backstory is very important because it puts him on more equal footing with the Lawrence character.
100% agree.
Because we see, like, he really is good at what he does. Steve Martin, when you first see him, he's just kind of working some woman on a train, but like you never get to see him work the way that Brando gets to work in the beginning of this film. So when the two of them go head to head in that original film, it's more believable for me. You know, in the remake, it feels like, well, Michael Caine's up here and Steve Martin's definitely down here. I don't know how this competition's going to work, but they feel a lot more like equals in that original film.
I think that I definitely get that, like, because that general wants his star. The fact that he's able to switch it on him. Brando shows a lot of cunning in that scene. He shows a lot of cunning with the women he interacts with before. The men in the military respect him. So when he finally does meet Lawrence and he underestimates Lawrence, he's like, oh, you must be some, like, family man kind of loser. It's not that he's not capable, right? He's young and inexperienced.
Right.
So, like, I feel like he's got the potential to be Lawrence Jameson in his own right. So I think you're right. There is equal footing there. Such a more believable rivalry.
Right.
Because we get to see him in action. We get to see as he's getting on the train, like
hordes all of women.
Every woman in Germany, I think, I was running after his car in the train.
Yeah, and then you're going to marry me, right? Yeah, just write to my General Robert E. Lee.
It's just really good versus, like, Steve Martin. They just kind of, like, open a train door and he's just standing there. Yeah,
and he's just, he doesn't have the military background.
Nope.
And he's not, handsome like Brando.
No.
So it's like, what is his game?
He really does come across as, like, this, like, small-time guy. His clothes aren't great.
Like a schlub. He's not even put together, like, nicely or neat. He's just, like, all disheveled and just, like, I guess I'm going to scam women. It's a weird... It's a weird way to go with that character, who you think, like, he's going to rely on his looks and everything. It's the way that Brando did. And, you definitely just don't do that with Steve Martin.
You just get so much more of that lead-in, right? So when Steve Martin just, like, gets a free meal, like, yeah, I guess that's impressive, like, a meal and 200 francs, but, like, then he has it's the same speech, basically, of, like, we're the weaker sex, actually, than women. And it doesn't hit the same way because who's this guy? Like, all right.
Right.
He scams, like, meals out of women. Like, although we still see the meal scene,
right?
Like, because we've seen this background with Brando, like, he really does think he's telling David Niven something he doesn't know. He's like, hey, this is how you do it, man. Like, a guy like you're not too bad yourself. You could probably get a couple $100. And he just doesn't realize the scope and the level that Niven's in. It just, like I said, it's just more believable.
Yeah, and going back to that meal scene, like, Brando, he's already talked to Niven. He's like, let me show you how to get a free lunch, right? So he's like, he's talking up this game, and he's actually able to follow through with it. Steve Martin, he didn't say, like, oh, watch me do this scam. So he's not like that. He doesn't have that confidence or that cockiness that is just, sort of endearing to the Benson character.
Yeah, I think, like, having the intro being, like, Niven seeing all the women chasing him, hearing the Robert E. Lee line, having this, like, young kind of upstart kind of showing him the ropes, as it were. Right. Like, all that builds up so that when they do finally end up, like, in the same train car, we've already had so much time with these two interacting and, like, Niven never giving up the game. To have Michael Caine just kind of playing in the background, watching and observing him, and then they happen to be in the same train car, it just feels kind of random and, I guess circumstantial. It doesn't really... the exact same scene, but with that little bit of background, I felt more on board with Brando early in the film. But again, I don't think Steve Martin's, because of, like we mentioned, his look and his... at least how he appears age-wise, right? Like, I don't see him as a younger man than Michael Caine, even if he is, right? Steve Martin's just playing into the comedy. And that's okay, but, like, you're losing some other elements. So it's like, okay, we've upped the comedy, but we've lost this background. I don't know if that's a good enough trade-off.
Yeah, I don't think it really pays off because the humor is pretty much the same in both films. We didn't really write any new jokes. We got, like I said, we got the same screenwriters. Pretty much all the jokes are the same.
Yeah.
The only new joke I think that I maybe laughed at was when he's playing Rupert, and then he brings out the "What are we doing, Uncle's here?" and he puts on like a latex glove and then loops it up. I was like, okay, damn.
What do we do after that?
Okay, so that was one joke that they added in, but like most of the jokes, beat for beat, are exactly the same.
That's true.
And you know the way Brando did it was pretty good, and you know Steve Martin, he didn't really get to add anything new. I just feel like you got Steve Martin. Let's use him.
Yeah.
And they really don't. They just, no, we got the script. We're going to use what we did before, you know. Even, like, scenes that were done in the remake, they're almost to kind of lose something because, like, the scene where he's pretends to be the doctor and then he, like, sees, you know, Freddy in the chair and then he's, like, starts hitting him in the legs, right? Yeah. So in the original film, Niven just starts out, starts smacking him right away. Yeah. Just hits him in the legs constantly. He's really beating the hell out of him. He really is. And then Michael Caine, like, it's like this slow build-up. It's like first he, like, tickles him, then he, like, pushes him, then he hits him lightly, and then he gets, like, one or two good whacks in. Yeah. But I just think it's so much funnier in the original film, because Niven just starts just hitting him, beating him. Oh, don't worry, he's fine. And then you ultimately get the same thing out of Freddy, where he's just crying, tears of joy. And, you know, Steve Martin's got a little bit of a funnier face, but the effect is, you're still going to be laughing no matter who does that scene.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. It's the same joke. I mean, at one point, I guess Michael Caine gets like a running start, but like even that felt weaker than actually Niven just kind of like
just laying going. Oh, don't worry, he's perfectly fine. It's so good.
Brando's just I mean, I do appreciate like that, like Benson's, because we spend more time with Brando's Benson. He's kind of a one-trick pony when it comes to his story. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, how many times we're going to hear about the grandma bit, sort of. But, like, I think it ultimately, for the ride that this character goes on, I think it actually works. Sure, I like that the remake doesn't dwell on as many of his exploits. But then that trade-off, like I said, you lose all of them, though. So, you know, you're basically, when they start, he's basically, Steve Martin is just Michael Caine's student. Right. And that's...
Yeah. You even have a training montage.
Yeah.
You know? There's never a montage.
Oh, the Hustle had a training montage.
So it's like, yeah, like I said, it's just harder for me to see them as equals because we have things like, we lose the backstory. Mm-hmm. We have this training montage. Teacher and student thing, this relationship, and it just feels like that the whole film, as opposed to the original where they really do feel like equals. You know, there's a reason that you know, when Lawrence sees all the women chasing Freddy, he's like, oh shit, I gotta get rid of this guy, because this guy's a problem. But then, you know, Steve Martin getting $20 from some woman in a shopping or dining cart, that doesn't seem like the same level of threat.
And you know, a scene that really works in the original, that it's still in the remake, but it doesn't work as well. When Lawrence Jameson basically tricks him to chase the Italian woman into another town, when Marlon Brando comes back, it's like, once again, reaffirming, holy shit, this guy's got moves, right? Like the fact that he's already on the mark that David Niven's after, and gets a ride all the way back from, like, Italy to France. You know, it's like, whoa, man. Like, that's such a much more powerful return back into the story than, like, all right, sure, Steve Martin's back. But, like, I don't know why, you know? Like, there's no real sign that he's that talented. And, you know, the scene doesn't, like I said, it doesn't hit the same way because it's like, all right, he's back. But it just feels more like a plot device and like furthering this character's mystique.
Yeah. I just, you know, Steve Martin, you know, great comedic actor. I think there was a bit of a miscast just because you need that kind of young, good-looking guy to play against that older guy. Like, one scene I love in the original is when they're following Freddy just to kind of expose him to the woman that he came into the country with. And then, like, he's driving a car. He just sees a woman walking around the block. He's in his car, and he turns to follow the woman. And then we're following them. And then as soon as we get them into our point of view, like, the woman's already in his car.
Yeah.
It's such a it's a simple scene, and it's such a great scene, and it is not in the remake.
No. Instead, they choose, which, is actually when Steve's a little bit funnier in the film. He goes on this crazy shopping spree. He's wearing like the Speedo and he's like doing stuff. But again, he's a joke.
Yeah, exactly. He's with the woman trying to like look all muscular. He's just a skinny old guy. Yeah. He's not going to be like, Brando on the beach,
He's not formidable. He does feel really small time. Whereas like Brando feels like a guy who's capable of so much more than just being like a bit player. And I think, like we mentioned, having that more equal footing between these two characters really makes this bet make sense. It's like, all right, is the young guy's more kind of like brash, forceful tactics, or are they going to work more than this more elegant, refined, thought out plan? And I pay this part of the town, and I do take care of these people. Whereas the guy was kind of out for himself. It truly does feel like a mentorship that could become a rivalry, and it's I don't know. It just works so much better when the guy's younger. To the point where we were talking about potential casting, I would love to see Eddie Murphy playing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, because he got the younger, good-looking guy, right?
Right. Like, Eddie Murphy has played characters like that before to a lot of success. And I mean, like, could you imagine, like, Michael Caine being like, "And we hold the glass like this," and Eddie Murphy's like, "Dang."
Yeah, right? Just being Eddie Murphy. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Like, man, that would have been cool. I just, like you mentioned, I think this is a miscast because there's not enough discernible difference between Steve Martin and Michael Caine age-wise, right? And the humor, because you mentioned, they don't really up the ante with the jokes. It could have been any one. So I would rather have a young person than a funny person.
Yeah.
In this cast.
I mean, if you're going to cast someone like Steve Martin, give him something to do. Don't just stick to what we did in the original. Like, exactly the same thing. Like, lines right off the page. Like, exactly the same in the remake. Yeah. How they're saying it. So, it's like, give him something to do or just cast someone else.
Yeah, totally. And to kind of keep things moving along, I don't know if I necessarily want to introduce another character, but, like, kind of introduce another concept. Like, when Lawrence Jameson brings on Freddie Benson and they start doing their cons around when they do the Rupert thing. Right. I guess we could talk about the Rupert thing.
Yeah, we can talk about Rupert. Ooh, there's a joke that doesn't age well.
No. This is very simple Jack.
You never go full retard.
No, you do not.
I immediately thought of Tropic Thunder too when I was watching both films. I was like,
yeah. So, like, there's kind of two different approaches to how we get Rupert, but ultimately it's the same beat. Freddie Benson isn't ready for the big time yet. So instead of being like an equal in the scam, Lawrence has him play his mentally challenged brother. He keeps in like a weird basement thing. Rupert.
Now I'm thinking like Rupert? No, it's Rupert.
So when there's like, your Fanny of Omaha type characters or other heiresses, once they've got the money that they needed from them, you scare them away with this brother character. And Brando, I mean, like you said, it doesn't age well. Either film, really. It doesn't age well, but like Brando's holding his weight with this character just as well. I mean, I think it's funny. He's got like the funny. Don't come at me. I didn't make it. That he's got like the plane and the little like his mannerisms as Rupert are very still humorous to the extent that they
right.
And then David Niven the whole time is like, just smile, you got to keep smiling.
Mother.
So like the Rupert silliness that happens, it works. They make money off these widows. They get them out of the scene faster because of Rupert, and they don't get their cut. But like Brando's take, just as funny to me as Steve Martin's.
Yeah, like I said, we're doing the same jokes. Like I was doing the mother thing, but Steve Martin does the mother thing too. and the only joke that was inserted was the uncle in the looped up glove.
Which actually, I was like, that's a little much.
Yeah, it kind of just comes out of nowhere, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. But like again, we're doing the same beats.
Yeah.
Right. So Steve Martin didn't really bring anything new to it.
I guess he brought a trident in that one scene.
A trident, the eye patch, knocking over the vase.
That was kind of funny.
So he's just looking a little threatening and everything. You know, it's I guess it has its funny moments, but again. We're doing the same thing.
It's the same.
So
exact.
It could have been anybody. It did not have to be Steve Martin doing that.
And I think that because of the way the Ruprecht sort of scam plays out, right? When in both films, the Jameson character starts paying off the people like Inspector Andre, who we're going to talk about, the servant, I think Arthur. Everyone gets their cut except for Freddie Benson. And Freddie's like, what's that about? I really like the scene. It's not necessarily in the remake, but I really did like the scene in the original where David Niven's like, let me show you what I do with the taxes. And he goes around and he's showing him like, this guy makes a goblet. And it takes him 3 years, but it's the best goblet. It's like, why is that mug getting my money? Culture. You see a guy who makes a violin. And like, yeah, all these endeavors that don't make money but are the arts. It actually gives David Niven a bit of a noble characteristic where should he have that? Like he's a scammer, but like he has this concept of giving back to the arts and the community in a way that is somewhat redeeming. And I
a bit of a Robin Hood almost.
Kind of not really. But like it's good background and backstory, and instead of doing that in the remake, they do more of like this, like you mentioned, this kind of training montage.
Well, yeah. Well, they do the training montage.
Well, it's kind of before Ruprecht.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole addition of the training montage is to sort of like mislead you. Like he's teaching him how to be classy and refined, and then here's the joke. You know, he's going to be this mentally challenged brother. So I think that's the whole purpose of the montage. But they did kind of have a scene like that in the remake. You know, he took him around, showed him like, look at this landscape that I'm taking care of, and look at this museum and all this art here. He's like, well, I like the naked lady. It's nothing I can really do with this. So, you know, there's still kind of that, but he's not really, I guess he is kind of giving, because it was like a tax in the original film, and then the remake, he's like, I don't want to give you the money if you're going to spend it poorly.
Right.
Like, if you don't spend it on this stuff, then I'm not going to give it to you.
Right.
So he's like, well, what the hell, man? So, you know, I guess he still kind of has it in the remake.
Similar. I think, I guess maybe because it's laid out a little bit clearer in the original, I slightly preferred that. But ultimately, the entire point is that as a student or someone learning his ways, you've got to be more refined. And you know, it leads to the movie kind of progressing to its next scenes where it's like, well, if you're not paying me, and you got me doing all this stuff, then why do I need you? Which, again, going back to what we were saying about the original, because they're kind of equals, when Brando goes out on his own, I could see him holding his own against David Niven. Versus Steve Martin, I don't know, like, he's kind of good at bribing or, like, blackmailing people slightly, but I don't know. We're still, I don't know, we're just so in that humor mode that as we progress throughout the film, I've said it before, I don't want to be a broken record, but like, where are we going with this character? You know, like what's his next move? So, like we were saying before, having this youthful, different philosophy just adds so much more weight to these scenes, so that you're 100% right. There's like the same beat, like they go to the museum, but like I just felt it more in that original.
Fair enough.
Yeah. There's a ton of characters that we could talk about.
Yeah.
I guess we should, before we get into like the main actors, maybe we should go back and kind of deal with some of these smaller.
Sure, because her portrayal, I guess, the ending with her is just so different, and that's kind of plays into her character, so it's really hard to talk about her without talking about the ending. Yeah.
Yeah. So, those are our two main leads, and like we mentioned, there's so much similarity. I actually want to kind of go back and fill in with some other characters that we meet along the way before the movie progresses past this kind of like scene that we're talking about where they go their own ways. One character that I really liked in both films, in the 1964 film, you got Dodie Goodman, who plays Fanny Eubank. And in the remake, you've got Barbara Harris as Fanny Eubanks. Fanny of Omaha. I think that this character, one, is a very funny character just because like she really plays into the Fanny, Lady Fanny of Omaha character. But like this is a great sort of real intro to the types of women that they're going after in the films. Just this kind of like naive, like you could feed me any line, I'm gonna follow it. I'm taking 2 princes with me back home, like type of character. I really did like Dodie Goodman's Fanny of Eubanks. She really just like leaned into just believing this bullshit. I found it to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty similar characters in both films. There's nothing really that the one in the remake does different. You know, she's the first mark, or I think she's kind of the second mark. Yeah, kind of the second mark. But we get to see like the whole process, I guess, of the Jameson character and just how he works his marks. And so she goes through the whole ride and she almost spoils it. Or she does spoil it for her. Lawrence ultimately, because she's the reason that Benson goes back. So, you know, like I said, it's the same portrayal pretty much in both movies, so I'm going to lean towards the original just because it's been done. And
I'm in the same camp, and I felt like we spend a little bit more time, at least it felt like it in the original, with Fanny of Eubanks, and just getting those extra little comedic beats out of her was, I don't know, I did prefer the original, but like, ultimately, like you said, very similar portrayals, but really important, like, for a minor character, pretty important minor character. A lot of the scamming is shown through Fanny of Eubanks, and like you mentioned, getting Freddie back off of that plane is Fanny of Eubanks' main job in the films.
I will say, well, we need to talk about Andre, about like in the beginning when Fanny's like learning all this information about the prince and everything. Every time like Michael Caine would talk to her or Andre would talk to her, they would always put her in a plant. I just thought that was a funny beat. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. So I just appreciated that. Like, again, not much different in the two films. It's a very small difference, but I thought it was pretty funny. Like, we gotta talk to her in the plant.
Yeah, that is funny. But you're right. Like, even talking about Fanny, you really can't talk about her without talking about... in the original film, you've got Aram Stephen, who plays Andre, I guess Inspector Andre, we'll still call him. And in the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, it's Anton Rogers as Inspector Andre. Right. Now, you're going to hear us say this a lot. Very similar characters.
I think, so this is the right-hand man to Lawrence, Lawrence Jameson. And, you know, he is a cop too, so that's an interesting little twist there. I guess he's a corrupt cop if he's working with his con artists. Very similar portrayals. He kind of has this thing where he wants to murder Freddy the whole time. He's like, "Don't worry, I know a guy, or we can do it this way." I think they lean into that a little bit more in the original film because he's always just randomly bringing up a way to kill him. He's like, "Jesus, we're not going to kill this guy." So I think he gets a little more play in the original film. Yeah,
you're 100% right. Like, we do get a little bit more, I think you're right, from this original portrayal. The scenes where he's talking about murdering him are very, very funny. Both of them share the same sort of role as, like, they have a shared interest in Jameson's continuing his grift. So they'll pull favors and stuff like that. Like, when one of the widowers gets robbed and, like, they, you know, same beat, right? Like, you drive her there, see Freddy stealing from them. Like, it's the same thing. Put him in jail. That's the same thing.
Right.
Instead of a hanging judge in in the original, it's a judge that tends to castrate people. In the remake, but ultimately the same bit. Like something bad's going to happen to you. But even though it's the same character, it's actually really fun, good character that helps keep the movie going. Like having that right hand man character really, again, gives our friend Jameson an advantage when it comes to going head to head with Freddie Benson. So that little bit of an advantage plays well in both films. But I agree with you that I prefer the original. Just maybe because of the original, but it did feel like there was more that he was doing.
Yeah, I don't know, because maybe we don't have those other characters. I don't really remember like an Arthur character or servant not too much in the original film.
Not really. He's there, but like I didn't even mention him because he's not of consequence.
So, just like I said, he's got a few more of those let's kill him this way jokes, I think, in the original film. Yeah. So I'll just give him the edge there.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. So now that we've kind of knocked out, you got your two leads. You've got your corrupt inspector. You've got your Fanny of Omaha, who's done her job. We're now at the part of the film, I would say like the midway mark, where these two guys have gone their separate ways, and now they've got their next goal, their next mark. And in the 1964 film, that's Shirley Jones as Janet Walker.
Now you must sit down and rest.
In Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the 1988 film, it's Glenn Headley as Janet Colgate.
Freddie, are you okay?
Oh, God. They're dancing.
Freddie, we are going up to my room right now and right to Dr. Schaffhausen.
Wonder why the change of the last name.
Not sure.
For no reason. And to Colgate, too.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she's going to be toothpaste related? No, still soap.
Still soap, right?
Still soap.
The soap queen.
Could have been like the toothpaste queen.
I thought they were going to do something like that.
The Colgate, right?
And yeah, they didn't. On the early side of things, like we're going to continue to mention, very similar characters. They more or less this naive heiress who has some soap.
Yeah. She was supposedly a soap heiress, but who ultimately isn't a soap heiress, just a contest winner. Mm-hmm. So when they first they're going to get money from her. That's the competition. In the original, it's $25,000. The remake is $50,000. Doesn't really make a difference. And then ultimately, Jameson discovers that she's not the heiress. Mm-hmm. She's just a contest winner, so he wants to call off the contest. Freddie's like, no way. Let's change the contest, like you said in your synopsis. And then it's who can bet her. But Jameson doesn't want to do that. You're just not gonna bet her. That's the bet here, and the loser still has to get out of town. So yeah, it's very similar portrayals. The only thing I can really think of to compare is maybe just her chemistry with the Freddie Benson character. Yeah. And just how that's different because, his whole thing is he's going to sleep with her now. So I just find that a hell of a lot more believable with Brando's character.
It's so much more believable. I mean, even the setup, it's the same setup, right? But like, I don't know, it just felt like they had real chemistry, like I felt like there was more of a shift in like Michael Caine's direction with the relationship in the remake. Right. Like even like the turn, like I felt like Freddie really felt like an asshole in this remake. Like I don't know, Brando throughout the process is more or less kind of, they both are, but like more or less dueling with Jameson. But he does seem to have like a genuine interest in Janet. And like you mentioned, super believable because Brando's maybe younger and like clearly we've established that he hooks up with women.
Yeah, we've seen all the women chasing him on the train, so we know that he can get women. Yeah. So he's very good at this. So like when the game becomes like, I'm going to seduce her. It's like, it's very believable because we've known he's to sleep with all these women in the beginning of the movie. Right. Steve Martin says he's going to do that. It's like, I don't know, man. Yeah. I don't know.
I know. It just felt like Niven really had to like up the ante. Right. to stop Marlon Brando from just achieving that.
Because that's his bread and butter. This is what Brando does, or the Freddie Benson character does. Like, before I decided to team up with you, this is what I was doing, man. So I got this in the bag. You are really going to have to pull out all your resources to stop me.
And again, because we have this background, right? When he first meets Janet, it makes sense that he's playing a soldier because he was a soldier, right? He plays right back into the sick grandma bit that he's been running the whole movie. He's elevated it because like now Brando's put himself in a wheelchair, and when Janet starts to hear this sob story, I really do feel like she would believe that this guy, this young man, bet his last dollar to try to help his sick grandma. The Detroit bookie. That's a great bit that we lose too, by the way.
What was it?
That Brando's grandmother's actually a bookie in Detroit.
Oh man, I missed that bit.
Yeah. It's in the remake.
I don't know.
That might be in the remake.
That might be in the remake.
I think that might be in the remake.
I don't know.
Who knows? I don't know. It's one of the films. It's the same movie. But like, yeah, Janet believing him made a lot more sense to me. And I really did feel like, for whatever reason, they just had just better chemistry throughout all these scenes. You know, her genuine concern for Freddie did feel like from a person that was attracted to him. You know, the dancing backstory, like the reason he's in a wheelchair is he watched his ex, or his fiance or something dance with some guy, and like now he can't walk. Like, since it's the same joke, like I'm giving the nod to the first film because like they did it first and they made it pretty funny. I just never really felt that same connection with Steve Martin in this Janet character, and I think it goes back to this central premise that he's a comedic player rather than a romantic one. So why am I now believing he's like a lady slayer? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like even the backstory of the cheating fiance is played a little bit more for laughs than the remake, because like he's like, we were on this TV show Dance USA, and then I saw her dancing naked and then have sex with the host. I forget his name. But I looked him up. He was a host of some dance. It wasn't Dance USA. It was another dance show that they had. So that's pretty funny. That's funny. But again, he's leaning a little more into that kind of like ridiculous humor. So it's her to feel pity for him. It's weird because it's such a silly backstory of like what happened and why he's like this, why he can't walk. So it's just, you know, it's so silly. So it's hard to really have her sympathy kind of turn into love because it's such a silly story.
I just don't get. Maybe I missed something there. I just didn't get where that turn was going to happen for those characters.
Yeah.
You know, like I just didn't see that. And I really, like, maybe because of the way they did the scenery, and I do believe, like, you know, I think that Glenn Headley is giving us more than Shirley Jones in the film. They're both doing the same thing, but, like, Glenn Headley gets a little bit more play as a more modern character. Her interactions with Michael Caine feel like more of, like, the romantic scenes. And I feel like, you know, they look like they were getting along pretty well, so that when Michael Caine was like, oh, I can't scam you because you're poor, it felt like he was coming from a genuine, like, good place. And I guess because we spent so much time with their interactions, that felt very natural. And again, I feel like those two had something going on as opposed to Steve Martin. In the original film, I will say this is where the remake starts to kind of pull ahead in terms of the humor, because the slapstick stuff that they're doing to Marlon Brando the whole time started to kind of get a little old for me. Like, you know, he's falling down, he's getting stuck behind, like, it just like all this, I forget what you call it, like that almost green screeny like stuff where he's just getting kind of beat around. Like, I didn't find it to be that funny after a while because it was like, all right, we kind of keep hitting the same bit. But the romance I did buy.
I will defend the humor in the original. There's a scene that is not in the remake, and that's when Schaffhausen first takes Janet and Freddie, I guess, to the villa. And then, like, he's like, let me show you the history of it, and then he's telling the history of like pretty much insulting like Freddy right there.
Yeah.
There's one prince, there were 2 princes, and one was a moron. And he's just like insulting Freddy, and then like Brando's just like kind of reacting to it. His reactions are pretty great there, and they don't have that scene in the remake.
Yeah, even that that felt fun and kind of natural. Like I did like that Niven is playing the upper hand here, because he had his plan, and Freddy broke out all the stakes, the wheelchair, the backstory, the grandma, and like it put Niven on his back foot, and I love that he was relishing retaking control. So like that scene is where he starts to like take it back. I just, again, I know it's the same beat. I never felt like Steve had Michael Caine on the back foot when he did this reveal. Like, yeah, it was a nuisance, but like I felt like Michael Caine was in the driver's seat the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time. And I could see in the original that Brando had his moments.
Yeah.
And it was like, again, that rivalry was more even. So it was like, okay, look at the push and pull here in the remake. Yeah, I mean, once we get into this wheelchair sort of backstory, I really think that Michael Caine just takes over from there in a way that I was kind of shocked, because I thought Steve Martin really could have shown with his comedy in a lot of these scenes, and it wasn't there.
No, they just stuck to the original, and it makes a lot more sense for Brando doing those things. Like, even just going back to kind of Janet and Freddy, like there's a scene where like Freddy's like upset and he like goes to the beach or something, and then Janet joins him, and it's just like their back and forth and their chemistry just feels a lot more genuine than when like Steve Martin like kind of pretends to fall downstairs and is like on the beach with Janet. It's, I don't know, there's a chemistry between them. There's just more sexual chemistry between the actors in the original film. Yeah.
So yeah, Shirley Jones, her Janet definitely has a good chemistry with Brando. I felt like the Schaffhausen scenes with her feel more kind of like in that professional space. I guess like perhaps they could have slept together, but like it felt like the whole time she was concerned about Freddy, for the most part. Versus like Glenn Headley, who, same thing. She's concerned about Freddy the whole time, but like, I don't know. Like I said, it just felt like her and Michael Caine had the chemistry, and it was a bit of a flip, in my opinion, there. But I will say that Glenn Headley's turn after that, I feel like her turn was much more satisfying than Shirley Jones. And it's because the movie did what, you would kind of think would happen here, right? Like, you've got these 2 scammers. They have a Mark who's like super naive. Like, I was expecting the turn that you see in the remake in the original film. Like, the original film deals more in like this Brando arc, and it works, but like, I don't know. I do appreciate that the remake finally at this point
does something different.
Takes matters in his own hands.
Yeah. So let's talk about the endings, because that'll help us also expand on the Janet character. So in the original film, I guess we'll start with, where should we start from? Okay, so Freddy is trying to sleep with Janet, and then he has these other military guys take Jameson away, so he thinks he's got Janet. It's a great scene too, because he's like, I'm standing. Go over there. I want to keep going. Go to the bed. And then he walks to her, and then they look like they're about to make love, and he's gonna win the bet right there. And then who's sitting right there? Good job, Freddy. Good job. So it's yeah. So Lawrence is right there, and Freddy's like, damn it, I can't do this. And he's like, come walk with me, Freddy. Ultimately, those paratroopers is what they were in the original film, and then they were like, I guess, guys in the Navy.
Guys,
Ultimately, because Lawrence was in the service in the exact same unit as them, so he brought them to like another villa or the house or something, and then they're partying with all these women in the room, so
Yep.
they love Jameson now, and their job is to keep Freddy from leaving that room. So then, at that point, Lawrence is able to take Janet to the airport or train or whatever in either film, and just bye, you're gone now. So he goes to tell Freddy, the bet's off, she's gone. But while she's on the train, she gets a telegram.
Right.
And the telegram is that because her letter, she wrote the letter to Schaffhausen, and she actually mailed it. And she got it back that, oh, he's actually dead. He's been dead for a couple of years. So she learns that she's been scammed this entire time from at least one of the guys. She does not know that Freddy's been scamming her too. So she's like freaking out. She runs back to Freddy. The two of them are there. They bang.
Yep.
They bang in this original film.
Buddy. That's Marlon Brando.
And then Andre reports the sad news to his boss. You lost the bet, sir.
Yep.
I don't know what to do. He's like, damn it, I lost. Can't believe it. And then Freddy, sure enough, shows up, and he's about to like eat it. And then Freddy's like, well, I messed up like more than I could even imagine because yeah, sure, we slept together, but I ended up marrying her. So now she's married to me. So that's the thing that happened, and that's kind of how the movie ends.
Yeah. Yeah, he becomes sort of that like doting husband.
Yes,
dear.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear.
That he thought that David Niven was. I do like their interplay, Niven and Brando at the end. Like he buys him a drink and there's a peach in it, and there's this backstory of like there's this like picked peach, like a man that gives up his I guess his woman chasing ways almost, I guess, like
sort of. Yeah.
I don't know, but that was like the metaphor that they had the entire film. So it was kind of cute, for lack of a better word, that like Niven gave him a martini with a peach in it. Little background wink and a nod between those two characters that Shirley Jones' character wasn't really aware of, but like it's a nice little ending for these two rivals. I guess there's also this factor of Marlon Brando's character kind of growing up and becoming more of a man. But it's an okay ending. It's not the most satisfying.
It definitely felt. Hold on, I'm gonna close that window.
Yeah.
That fucking thing is.
Yeah. Close this window too. Damn it. Damn it. That's better.
There we go. All right.
Okay.
The ending. Yeah, that ending was pretty weak, I thought.
Yeah, it was.
Now I married her, and then so I'm out of the game, I guess, was ultimately what he was saying. And Niven can keep doing what he does, but it felt weak. And then it's like, well, you married her, but this whole thing is based on a lie. Right? You lied to her. You're never mentally or physically disabled.
Yep.
You never had this fiance. You only met her because of this bet. I mean, does that ever come into play during the marriage?
No. Just
gonna keep lying to her the rest of his life.
And
she can never meet Jameson because she knows he's a con artist, so he can never be around.
Yeah.
He says, "My best friend." Well, you can't see your best friend because then your wife will know what's up.
Yeah, it's a weak ending in that respect. That like there's a ton of loose ends that just will not be addressed. Ultimately, because I guess it's a '60s film. Boy meets girl, they get married. That's it. Gotta make it. Christian and legal and all that stuff. Like it's just an ending for kind of ending's sake. And you're right. There's all these open questions that we know as an audience will never be addressed, and they just want you to be okay with that. But like you're right, like you just get this last little send off from Jameson with the peach, and that's supposed to be enough for us. I don't know, not my favorite ending, but it wasn't like so bad that I was like this movie's ruined now. But I was like, it could have been more here.
Isn't there an extra scene too? Actually,
I think there is. Actually,
I might have missed. Hold on, I know it's in the synopsis. There's with Lawrence, I think. Okay, yeah. So Lawrence, I think he's talking to Andre. He's like, "Is he happier than you?" He's like,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, I think he's happier than me." And hold on, reflection. In the end, Fred is happier than he, but he sees the mark ravaging. Okay, yes, because he thinks Freddy is happier ultimately because he kind of settled down and just gonna man up and be the husband to this woman, and he's like in misery.
Yes.
Lawrence, but then he sees a beautiful woman, a new Mark walking by, and he's like, well, what is it? A man must learn to live with his misery. So he's not really miserable because he's gonna still be with beautiful women and get their money.
Which, thankfully, that scene's there because like it does kind of further this Jameson story. So like, look, because we've given Freddy a background, we've given him an arc, and his arc was from like pretty rough scammer. Like his tactics to get with women are pretty reprehensible. And then ultimately, I guess he goes good. I like that Jameson doesn't go good. He's an older guy. He's stuck in his ways. Maybe he'll settle down with that woman. Or maybe he'll just keep doing what he's been doing. And that was good to have that sort of not post-credit scene, but something like that.
Yeah.
I found that to be a good scene as well because at this point we've more or less taken Brando out of the game, so it's good to have Niven give us a little bit more before closing it out.
But ultimately, like I said, it does feel like a forced ending for Freddy, who all of a sudden I just married her. Okay, what? So the ending is one thing I will say that I think the remake does a little bit better here. So again, he's trying to sleep with her, and Jameson sends her away on a plane. You think she's gonna go on it, and then
okay, I got it here.
Okay,
So this ending in the remake is interesting, right? Because like I said, the Michael Caine character, the way that they're playing this feels really bad for this Janet, because he realized that she's not actually rich. She's broke. So like Steve Martin really does feel like he's just going full steam ahead. I don't give a shit about this person. So after basically the same scene with like, in this case, the sailors instead of the paratroopers, how does she find out?
She doesn't find out. She just comes back. We're not told why she comes back. And let's set this up too. Yeah. In the beginning of the film, but kind of around the time when Jameson has met Benson, he sees a newspaper article or something about the Jackal, this Western thief who's in Europe all of a sudden. So, and it's like, they even make a good comment like, we can't be that good of a thief if the papers are writing about them. So that's just a setup here. So Freddy is still trying to sleep with Janet, but he's been super glued to the room with all the sailors in it, so he can't get out. And then like Jameson's like, it's done. I sent her away. She's gone. So you can go check. So he goes to check. He sees that she's not there, but miraculously she does show up last second. And then they're like, oh my God, Freddy. Oh my God, Janet. And it looks like they are going to indeed seal the deal, and Freddy is going to win. And then sure enough, Andre calls up Jameson and lets him know, they were in that room for a long time, long enough. So it looks like you lost the bet, sir. And then out of nowhere, Janet kind of comes up to Jameson and says, oh my God, I can't believe what happened. What happened? What happened? He's like, Freddy, we slept together and then he stole from me. He's like, well, you did what? He stole all that money. But I told you I didn't need the money anymore. And I still had the money on me. So he's like, oh, I can't believe what happened, that he stole the money. He's like, I'm going to take care of this, and I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to send you back. I'm going to send you back. You take $50,000 of my money. I'm going to take care of everything. Sends her on the plane with his money. She actually stops, turns around and says, I can't take this money, gives him back the money, and then goes on the plane. As she's in the plane, Steve Martin arrives. He's like, what are you doing? Don't let her go. How could you let her go?
He's in a robe and he's got like handcuffs on.
He's chasing the plane like an idiot. And then he's like, well, what'd you do? You didn't have to steal her money. Steal her money? What are you talking about? First thing I knew, like, looks like we're going to have sex. And then she tells me to take a shower. I come out of the shower and then she's gone. She stole my money and my clothes. He's like, what are you talking about? She's not like that. She's so good. As a matter of fact, I was going to give her $50,000 and she gave it back to me. And he's like, what? And then he opens it up and nope, she took the $50,000. All that was in there was Steve Martin's clothes. So Scammers got scammed.
Which to me feels like kind of an appropriate term, right? Like these guys have spent their lives taking advantage of women, and they've underestimated this woman completely, who turns out to be the biggest scammer in them all.
Yeah. She's the Jackal.
She's the Jackal.
She left a note in there, thanks for the fun boys, signed the Jackal. So the whole time we think Steve Martin's the Jackal, but she's actually the Jackal.
It's a great turn. Really, really puts Glenn Headley's Janet over the top by having this this great reveal. And beyond that, it allows us to have more fun in these scenes, right? Like these two have got their comeuppance. And, you know, they kind of continue to move forward, you know, lamenting the loss that they both had here. And out of nowhere, here comes Janet.
Yeah.
With a group of, like, investors, like a Greek millionaire and some other people. She's doing this wild accent.
Reminds me of, like, Janine from Ghostbusters.
Yeah, yeah. And she's got this elaborate backstory about, you know, like, random property in Australia and stuff like that. And it's so funny because, like, she comes back and she's like, well, pointing at Jameson, he's a famous Australian, whatever, investor type character. And Michael Caine's just like,
he's like, what the fuck? He's like, say something. He's like, good day.
Ship on the bottom.
Yeah. So he buys in to her scam. And then she's like, oh yeah, I can't forget his partner over here. He's mute.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a funny beat there. So now Steve Martin can't say shit. And then she's like, look, I got this scam going. Come on, boys. That was fun. Yeah. Let's make this money together.
And you find out the scope and level too. She's like, I made whatever, like 20-something million last year. But the best 50,000 or like the best money I got was your 50,000. It was like, that's such a good line. Because it shows she's way better at this than both of them. She is now the master. They are now the students. And Steve Martin gets that extra little poke where he can't talk. Okay. And again, that goes back to what I was saying, that I felt like her chemistry with Michael Caine was better. And you see it at the end when she allows Michael Caine to talk, and she's like, you know, kind of screw you, Steve Martin, but you're still, you know.
Yeah, you'll still get a cut.
Yeah, you get a cut. Fun ending. You know, maybe a little over the top with all of the accents and stuff like that. But
yeah. I mean, it's a stronger ending for sure. I like because it gives Janet something. Yeah. You know, she doesn't just I'm just gonna marry this man and live in blissful ignorance. Yeah. You know, at least she's like you said, she's the fucking best one. Yeah, and then they're the ones who got schooled. Yeah. So it's great for her. You know, I don't know if we needed her to come back and team up with them. Like, personally, I felt like that was a little like, all right, now we're getting a little ridiculous here. But I really do like that she outsmarted both of them. Yeah. And that was her whole arc. Because, like, the whole time I'm watching her performance, I'm like, I don't know, man. Yeah. The whole time.
Because you're watching it, it's like, I don't know, she's giving as much energy as Shirley Jones did. And, you know, that wasn't much then. You know, she was just, like, concerned the whole time. But, like, that turn. Great for her.
Just makes her character so much better. So we followed the original movie like very close for like forever, and then all of a sudden, like the last 10 minutes or so, just completely turn it and like make her character so much stronger. So it was only a very good change in the remake right there.
Yeah, this is a bit odd. I don't think we normally do this, but in the 2019 film, just because like I don't want to do another episode.
We don't have to do an episode for this.
No. But like the 2019 film with Anne Hathaway, who let me see what their characters' names are. Just to throw this in, because I think just to round this out, I guess, because they're effectively the same movie too. Yeah, in the 2019 film, like instead of this Lawrence Jameson character, you got Anne Hathaway who plays Josephine Chesterfield. And you got Rebel Wilson instead of being Freddie Benson, who plays Penny Russ. Again, this is strange, but I wanted to bring it in because the movies are effectively still beat for beat kind of the same thing. Rebel Wilson plays up more of like this slapstick energy. That movie has a very similar ending turn as well. But like, they kind of flip it again where like the Jameson type character played by Anne Hathaway is the jerk the whole time. And Rebel Wilson is like the nice one ultimately of the scammers. So like when their mark flips it on them, because in that film, the original film was 25,000, 1988 is 50,000. That film is 500,000, right? So they just keep upping the price. But like going back to like the chemistry that you got with Brando and Janet in the original film, what they did with this sort of gender swap remake brought the attention back on like the less refined character. And I think that what does slightly bother me about 88 is that like the less refined character is kind of the jerk the whole time. And like these other two films, they're all the same film. Kept the focus on that character. It's almost like not quite rags to riches, but like, you know, you're building this character up. And I just thought that it was interesting that you have two separate films with the same plot that chose that route, and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels went kind of the other route.
Right.
So, again, I don't want to talk too much about the hustle.
Hustle.
Because I think that's ultimately not a great film. But like, I just thought that they did some interesting things with the ending as well. So I wanted to at least point out that I thought they have the exact same kind of jackal reveal. Right. It worked well in that film because I think they kept the focus on the character you would expect to have the romantic relationship the whole time. So just a throwaway aside, wanted to bring it up.
All right. Where do we go from here? Are there any other topics to talk about, or any other characters, any other moments in either film that you just thought was interesting you want to discuss? I'm trying to think. I mean, I think we talked about everything.
What I find ultimately interesting about this film or this series of films is that how easily you can swap this story into a film. Kind of like when we did The Magnificent Seven, right? Like that storyline just works in a film. I feel like this story also just works, right? Like it's proven, like they've done it multiple times to pretty decent success. I don't know what that says about the story overall, but like I just felt that like I got nothing actually. Never mind. I got nothing.
All right, we can go to the verdicts then.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, like, is there anything, like, because the action's the same?
Everything's the same. There's just a lot of similarities, so it's really tough to compare anything, because it's like, wow, I just saw that again.
Yeah.
Because the only main difference is just that ending. There is one scene, I guess, when Schaffhausen is putting Freddy into the car for the first time, where one of the women that he scammed comes out, like, Your Highness.
Oh, yeah.
Like, almost, like, ends it for him right there, and then he's ultimately able to just play it off as, oh, it's one of my former patients. Incurable, I'm afraid. So, like, I thought they were going to, you know,
do something with that?
Do something with that.
Yeah.
And they really don't.
Yeah, I just kind of papered over that scene, because, like, it's almost like fluff, right? Because, you know, okay, we might be giving up the game right here, and he's just able to build it into the Schaffhausen?
Yeah, Schaffhausen character more.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, well, there's just more of him pretending to be Schaffhausen to just a different person who doesn't matter because there will not be in any following scenes. Yeah, I don't know, like, there is some fun to be had with accents, so we get to play with that in the film, but yeah, not much else. So, ultimately, with these films being what they are, Dan, what's your verdict? Should this remake exist?
So, like I said, I'd never heard of Bedtime Stories, and I thought it was a really solid film, sans the ending, because it definitely could have been stronger, and I was looking forward to the remake. I mean, not only, like, do I like the cast, I'm like, all right, Michael Caine, Steve Martin's really funny, so I'm like, oh, this is going to be good, and then we're changing the name to Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Holy shit. Right. I can't wait to see what we do with these two, because we can get really messy here, have a lot of fun, and I was so disappointed that we just did everything the same beat for beat, except for the last 10 minutes. Yeah. So while I like the ending in the remake, and it's much stronger, and it's just obviously much better for the Janet character, overall, it's the same fucking movie.
Yeah.
The performances are fine. I just say fine because I really feel like Steve Martin's completely underutilized here because we're just giving him exactly what Brando did, and Brando did it better.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Giving him that backstory really helps to make his character more on even footing with the Jameson character. So you did pretty much the same thing. You had a nice ending, but I really don't think that it should exist because you just didn't really bring anything new to the table. And my whole thing is, if you're going to do it, you got to do something new. And just changing the ending a little bit is not enough. And, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I'm like go there with that name.
Right.
Let's see how these guys are really pieces of shit and can really, you could really have fun with that, especially with like Steve Martin. But they just played it safe, stuck with the original script. So if you're gonna do that, I'll just watch the original movie.
Yeah. All right. I come into this with similar thoughts, right? Like, I was pleasantly surprised by Bedtime Story. I was like, wow, this is actually a solid film. I found a lot of what I liked about it was those opening sequences. It wasn't some of the military stuff, like the Burgermeister's daughter, the scene, like you mentioned, great scene with the Colonel before.
It's such a great scene.
It's so good. And like you mentioned, it does remind me a lot of the Nutty Professor scene. So you're utilizing Brando in a way that like you really get to see his acting ability with this character. You're utilizing Nivens, who I think is like perfectly cast as this Jameson character.
So much better than he was in Casino Royale. so much better. Good actor. Hey,
the guy can act. And, that's sort of my takeaway from the original film is that like the casting makes sense, right? As I'm watching the remake, like I like Michael Caine, but even he's not really giving us much here. He's doing a Nivens impression.
Yeah.
Steve Martin, who is doing his own thing, but like you mentioned, they don't lean into this dirty scoundrelry as much as you would think they would. Like I was expecting, just like you, to like up the ante.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm just watching the same movie again. I'm literally just watching the same movie again. The twist ending, which I think if you had that type of ending in the first film, I'm like, oh, one of the best movies I've seen. Because like I think that's what was missing, right? Like it felt like that was the turn where these two were going to learn a lesson. Instead of learning a lesson, they one got married and the other one was like, I'm going to keep doing this. It was cool seeing the Janet turn in the remake, but it certainly, I agree, was not enough to say that like this should exist. Because like, what's different about it?
Yeah.
Other than that, like, okay, like they got like a somewhat twist ending. Like she was the jackal. I mean that to me is not enough to make an entirely different film. And I'll make it a 3 for watching like The Hustle, because I finished that this morning as well. Like there's elements of The Hustle that I like more than Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I think that at least they did something different.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie either. The Hustle is not a good movie. Because like where The Hustle really flubs is the ending. They really like just fail there. But like, I don't know. I actually found that to be more compelling overall than Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which should be blasphemy because you've got these two great actors, and they're not using them. It's like I'm just imagining the world where it's John Cleese and Eddie Murphy. Like I think I'd love that movie.
I love that because they're different.
yeah.
You got old, and you can see kind of regal, and then Eddie Murphy, young, and just
Eddie Murphy would have crushed this movie, man. And you would say the same thing about Steve Martin. Steve Martin should be crushing this movie. Right. And that it's hard to say bad casting, but yes, bad casting ultimately sinks Dirty Rotten Scoundrels because they're using the star power, but they're not using the stars. So this movie should not exist.
Yeah, and fuck, I was gonna say something. I forgot that. Oh yeah, when you stick so close to the original, like I said, lines were the same. You have the same named characters. Everything's the same. So yeah, we're just gonna go in favor of the original because I feel like it was done pretty well by those actors at the time, and you didn't really do anything new. So sorry. And I looked it up too, and this remake, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. So it was pretty fresh. Critics really loved the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I don't get it. And
I think it's because people have never seen Bedtime Story.
Probably. And like one review I read, it was like, this is a great modern adaptation of this. I was like, what did they modernize other than the last 10 minutes? We're just following everything else beat for beat.
I know. I mean, even like the Ruprecht thing. I mean, because like we're getting into like the 80s. We're starting to shy away from that type of humor. They ran it in with the mentally challenged brother angle. Like, I don't know. It didn't feel that modern to me.
No.
You know? I'll say the best thing that happened was I got to watch Bedtime Story. I was like, wow, did not know how good of a movie this was.
Yeah, I didn't expect Brando to really pull off comedy.
I thought it was gonna suck. I was like, Brando, I don't know.
The setup is weird too in Bedtime Stories because it's told. You start with a voiceover, right? It is kind of like a bedtime story. We're learning about the prince, and he's not really a prince. He lives in a castle, but not really a castle. It's more of a chateau. And then it's like, well, and then we have the other wolf here in this forest, and then it's our introduction to Brando. So it is weird. So that does like feel like I'm glad they got rid of that in the remake.
Yeah, because that part I just like forgot. I was like,
it's a weird way to do it because the narration's gone after that too. So it's like, why did we have it at all?
It makes it feel dated, which is interesting because like after that, it doesn't in a lot of ways.
It works really well. I mean,
the jokes held up through the 80s. So you know, wow. It held up through 2019. They did it again. You know, like, I don't know. It's just. This is one of those moments where like the script is really good. Yeah, the script is really good. You can kind of plug in whoever you want, but I think it's super important to have that young old dynamic. And when they didn't really have that, it made it stop working because you need to be like a true mentee, right? A real student, and I think having an age gap makes that just easier for the audience to digest. And people want to bang young people, you know what I mean? I could imagine Brando probably had a lot of interesting encounters on that set. Guy was an animal.
All right, so that's what we thought of the film. What did you guys think? Agree, disagree? I know that's two of us.
People might hate us after this.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen this film and probably never watched the original. Like, I mean, we never watched the original, so that's fair enough. But when you see the original and just see how close the remake sticks to that, and it's just like it makes it pointless.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like this foray into doing the movie again makes no sense, other than the ending, and I think that just doesn't justify. This at all. And
it's a longer movie too.
Yeah.
And that ending is not going to justify that long runtime because we also got rid of the backstory for the Freddy character. So how is it so much longer? Because there's montages. There's so many montages in this remake.
You just wish that they gave you a background for Steve Martin. It doesn't have to be the military, but let's see him doing some grifting.
Let me believe that he's a competent con artist before I just have him already interacting with the king, supposed king. Prince, I guess you could say.
Because when you first introduce him, like when the camera just holds on his face, like I'm like, what are they trying to tell me? Like, it's like I get it. It's Steve Martin. I guess that's cool, but like, why am I drawn to this character as opposed to anyone else in this room? You know, it's really strange. But you know, whatever. Everyone has their own opinions about these films. It just happened to be ours.
Yeah. So if you disagree, definitely let us know. Let us have it. All right, so the next episode, we were talking earlier, so I think we're going to do one of those Disney live-action remakes, and we're going to go Dumbo.
Nice.
Dumbo. So watch some Dumbo for our next episode.
Awesome, man.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, like I said, let us know how you feel. If you really disagree with us, let us know why we're wrong. If you like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars if you're on iTunes, and help us grow this channel.
And definitely check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. At Retro versus Remake on the social medias. And yeah, man, another fun episode. Surprised by
the ending. Yeah, like our verdicts. Like I thought, like I was gonna be 100% on board with this remake.
Me too.
But then the longer the movie got, and the more I kept writing in my notes, just like the original, I knew I was not gonna greenlight this one.
Yeah, as soon as we started talking, I was like, no, it's kind of like the same thing. But I guess it's the same thing. So yeah, it doesn't work for us. All right. As always, I'm Reggie Parker.
And I'm Dan Bulick. Thanks for watching another episode of Retro vs. Remake.